Welcome to episode 3 of the PMILOC Podcast, the Hour of PM Power. I'm your host, Tony Lumbwe, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Coach Thomas Scaria, a distinguished resilience coach, ultra marathoner, and also a published author. Thomas is the visionary behind Resilience+Rise, which is a transformative framework dedicated to empowering professionals and growth seekers to break through boundaries and redefine success on their own terms. With over 25 years of corporate experience, holding an MBA, PMP certification, Thomas has seamlessly integrated his passion for endurance sports, having completed over 85 marathons and ultra marathons into his coaching philosophy. So his personal journey from a sedentary lifestyle to become an accomplished ultra marathoner exemplifies the power of resilience and purposeful transformation. So, in our conversation today, we'll delve into Thomas's unique approach to resilience. We'll explore the insights from his upcoming book, Resilience and Rise. And we'll also uncover how the principles of endurance sport can be applied to achieve sustainable success in both personal and professional realms. So stay tuned for an inspiring discussion that promises to equip you with actionable strategies to navigate life's challenges and also to rise stronger. So help me in welcoming Coach Thomas. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
It's so great to have you with us, and thanks again for sparing this time.
It's a pleasure, privilege, and an honor because, again, being in the realms of project management, that has been always something which has been something that I always work around with. So glad to be here.
Yeah, great, thanks. So we'll delve right in. We'll start off with early influences and your upbringing. So I'd like to know, or for my own interest and also for our audience, were there any specific experiences or any mentors during your upbringing that influenced the way that you did today?
There have been many teachers, and if you look in that way, that's how when I realize now, looking back, in the hindsight, that there were many teachers. But when I was growing up, I was just going through the motions. It was a good life, and but one of the elements which I loved was I was in the space of service delivery. So I was in IT infrastructure, and I was very much involved with service delivery, and that gave me not a sense of feeling, a sense of purpose, because there was a tagline which I would say is that because the clients exist, I exist. Because if the clients knew everything on how things to be done, there would not be a requirement for me. And that's how my initial work went on. So I started in service delivery, and then slowly I got into infrastructure as an infrastructure engineer. And then I got in, I took a break, did a MBA. And during that time, in fact, before that, I was already into the project management space. So during that time, I did come across many people who showed me different paths, but end of the day, it was when people look deep within, there is always a calling, and that's where
Yeah.
I looked into. Yes.
Very interesting. But still, in those early days, and when you look at both project management and endurance, both required some level of discipline and resilience. And when you look back, were there
No,
early signs in life that
no,
you'd excel in both these areas?
no. So as I mentioned, I used a word mindful statement saying that I was existing. I was going through the motions. If required to be on time, I would be on time. If required to be disciplined, I would be disciplined. But was it a trait within me? No. I had quite a bit of, not quite a bit of uh, laid back attitude. I used to be very much. involved with not healthy habits. I was never into sports, so I was, and work would be is that okay? I would get the work, I would enjoy what I was doing, but that was about it. But as I mentioned, getting to the other side for the clients or the customers, that has been always a paramount DNA for me, and now that has translated a lot into coaching space also.
Very, very interesting. And when you when you when you look at cultural and personal values, often one says that they shape the way that you lead, they shape your leadership philosophy. I'd like to know how did your upbringing and background really impact your approach to leadership and project management, if in any possible way.
Actually, I would not be able to say anything because when I'm looking back, were there any core personalities that I believe that was I allowed to follow? No, I did not have any on that particular thing. Was there any specific type of a goal that I had set in for myself? No. So, as
Yeah.
per, I would say, I saw myself as millions of other people who are just getting a job, enjoying the job, getting the salary, spending the salary. Next month comes in, the cycle continues.
So sort of a day by day, but then how do you detach from that to decide to become this leader or this person that is just different from the group?
So, there, let me just then continue with what happened. There was a point when I was working up in the north, Yellowknife, in the mines. And there I was an infrastructure engineer. And I realized I was enjoying doing what I was doing, but it was not giving me, I knew there was something more to it. Though I was doing a lot of project coordination during that time, I was not able to understand where exactly I need to hone my skills onto. Due to maybe lack of knowledge, I said, okay, why not MBA? Because at that point of time MBA was the buzzword if you wanted to break the boundaries. I mean, there are a lot of people who were there in my cohort who did amazingly. I got into MBA and I did not really get a big value out of it. Yes, it may be a little more wiser academically, but a transition as a person, I'm not too sure whether that happened. But what happened was it gave me an opportunity to be a mentor for a lot of MBA students because by then I had already got around 20 years of experience. But so here, with my way of seeing how, of course, I'm a voracious reader and also I have had different experience. So I would get these experiences together. And one of the reasons why I got to be a mentor or working towards being a leader was because I did not have any to show me or guide me to the next level. So that's when I started developing myself to be a leader. So initially, and in fact now also, I help a lot of grads and undergrads for their career clarity. What are the next steps to be done? How they can move around the next phase of life? So I did my MBA, but there again I realized it is when we do an MBA, it is a wide landscape. It is the example I give is that you walk into a kitchen and you learn a little of everything. And I realized that was not what I was looking out for. I wanted to hone my skills based on what my background was, that was in service delivery. And then though I was doing project coordination, then somebody introduced me like what project management is all about. And that's when I said, okay, that's where I want to be. And I worked towards getting to my PMP certification, which was not at all difficult. I mean, it depends on how you're looking at it. And I got into PMP and I got into being a project manager. Got into a job and I loved it because it had all the elements what was required for my growth. So for me, as I mentioned, service delivery. It was about people helping them, and then came in the scheduling because when I'm totally into service delivery, it's about how your the SLAs which comes in service level agreements. And here you're adding another caveat of budgets also getting it together. So that became a beautiful amalgamation. That's where and I realized the concept of leadership, more as a servant leadership. Because whenever I used to go in for the meeting, I would not say that I'm a project manager or I'm the leader of the team. I would usually start by saying is that I'm over here to help you. And one of the main trump cards I've got is that I can talk to the stakeholders. So if there's a problem, I'm the person that you should be talking to.
Absolutely. So one of the very interesting concepts that I did get from one of my guests on the podcast is that you actually do not manage people. You manage the environment where people are working. Do you agree to that?
Very much because it is, see, a manager manages people, a leader leads the people. For me, whenever I was a project manager or the word, um, I would look into the point that my resources, how can I help them to get better? Once this project is over, could they be in a position to be promoted to something else? So I would elevate them towards the task and the responsibilities. Of course, we used to have the good old charts about who's designated what task, etc. But if there was something else that could be allowed in that periphery, I would ask them if they were interested in doing it and in the process get them to the next level. Because these elements were not provided to me. Or maybe I was not in that particular mindset. But then when I realized if there is somebody that could help another resource to be better and develop their potential, because I believe myself to be a human development miner more than anything else. I mine out what is the development between in the people, and I allow it to shine and get it across.
I see.
Yes,
Pretty much, yeah. I can definitely see that the experience that you've had over the years definitely um, get got to shape you into the current leader that you are out of the corporate leadership. So, and this will lead me to my next question,
sure.
because you've led
Yes,
teams, as you said, and projects in high pressure environments, I believe.
yes,
And so this motivation to move beyond traditional corporate leadership and develop the resilience and rise framework, where, what actually motivated you to move, to make that move? And we will get to resilience and rise framework, but if you want, you can throw in a few gems about what it's about
sure.
already. But
Pleasure,
sure.
pleasure. So I was working as a project manager, and it was going good. And then I got into being a client service or client delivery manager. So that also was getting interesting. But there came a point of time during COVID, everything stopped. And at that point, I realized that what can I do? And prior to that, I had taken on running, and I would love to run. I would say I'm not a fast runner, but I am a runner.
So long distance,
Long distance was
probably.
never been a challenge for me, and this was a that though I've got n number of injuries, n number of times when going for a race, I've had the fantastic DNF that is did not finish. But then that's about life also, right? Every time thing you pick up, every goal you pick up, it doesn't mean that you have to complete it.
Absolutely. Well, you could start with the intention to complete,
Completed. Yeah,
but
intentions, if it is truthful and honest, yes, you would want to finish it, but then life at times happen. So coming back to this resilience plus rise. So there was a point of time wherein I was not in a very good space because there were a few personal things which took place. Number one being that it was actually 2020 around the same time now in April that I got the news that my dad had passed away. And due to some whim, and fancy of the, whether we call it as a universe or the twist and turns, within 12 hours, I was no more with the organization that I was working in. And two things happening together, and especially when I come from a South Asian background, India. And in India, there is two elements which is very high in that Maslow hierarchy, is that one is a family and the second thing is career. And losing both of them one day, it hit me. But
Quite a shock.
it was quite a shock. But then, Tony, the wonderment when I look back at it, because when I was writing the book, or when I'm still talking about it, when I look back at it, that shock was not exactly that. Yes, I was hurt, but there was something else which took place. Here, I talk about a purpose, because what I say is that from our deepest of pain comes the deepest of our purposes.
For sure. Is it a bit like saying that diamonds are formed under pressure?
Under pressure, you could say. So during that time, what I found my safe haven was in running. And in Vancouver, I could go running around the city. There was no problems about it as long as you kept the social distances. During one of those times, I got in a junk mail, or was it a placard? I got a mail from Terry Fox Cancer Research Foundation asking for donation. And I realized I did not have that much. I did not have money to provide for this research of the cancer, because it was a sincere pleasing that because of this hardened times, funds are coming in very less. But what came to my mind, Tony, at that point of time is that universe, the creator, has been good enough to give me the gift of running. And that's when I had got my balance because of what had just taken place. And I said, why can't I convert this gift for a better good? And I took on the challenge of doing 5 weekends, 5 marathons. And I completed all those five, but it was such a beautiful challenge. Very painful, very hurtful. And that was the birthplace of resilience plus rise. Because whenever I take a benchmark, I see myself as a person who used to have 2 packets of cigarettes a day. And as I mentioned, as I've been making honing on the fact that I had been just existing, that's when I changed my narration that life is for living, not for existing.
That's deep, and that's also very interesting to know that all this happened within the space of what, less than 5 years, because we're talking about COVID, so that's 5 years ago. And I'm curious about those marathons that you ran, 5 per week. So you ran them back to back.
Yeah. So every week I would do a 42-kilometer run. And here, again, it when you are in that mindset, a good example I would say is that when there are project managers or resources working, if they are totally invested in that project, do you know about the time that goes in? At times, I say that a lot of times we project managers are like these beautiful ducks sitting on the water, but down below our feet is waddling so quickly, just to stay afloat. So the same space is that when we are doing something else and we feel there is a sense of movement, a sense of stirring within our soul, we get lost into it. It gets transcendental. For me, when I was doing those 5 marathons, as I mentioned, is that you're a runner, and there are times wherein we hit the beautiful wall, wherein we just cannot take the next step. We just freeze up mentally, physically, emotionally. For guys who are listening to this, do Google for the wall, the runner's wall for long distance run. You'll know what I'm talking about. But what I took over here was I was not the player. The player was I was playing for somebody else. I was doing this for the people who, it was not even about the people who were affected by cancer. This was more for the people who were around the bed, for the people affected by cancer, because the person having the problem could cry or be sorrowful. But what about the people who are around them? Who would say a hurrah for them? Who would applaud them for what they are doing? It's not about applaud, but then who would say that, a pat on the back, that, hey, you know what, you all are doing good.
Cheering them up, telling them it's going to be
It's
okay,
going to
and
be
all of
okay.
that.
So my run was
Mhm.
for that. So for me, it was that when it's painful, I would just think about them and say that, the pain that they go through, this is nothing what I'm going through. And one step after the other, one step after the other. And that's what, and then of course, people, I've got an andomorphic body, which means I've still got, if you look at me, I don't look like a runner. I'm not a conventional runner. And people look at me and immediately they look at my stomach and they say, then I say, I run with my legs, dude. And
Well,
stomach is required because I need the fat to give me the energy to continue with it.
I was going to say your body needs to burn that energy. So this is interesting because it sounds like it's a bit of tricking your mind in a way in order to push yourself to that level of endurance. um and obviously you had a goal, you had something that you set before you start these races. And translating that to project management, we see that many leaders and project managers do struggle with that definition of success, beyond deadlines and KPIs. So, for you to define, to redefine success for yourself, how do you do it, and how does that influence the way that you coach others?
Fantastic question. So even after COVID came to a close, then I got back to the field of project management. But what I saw, in fact, I had noticed it before also. But now, because of that mindset which had changed in its own way, I realized when I was talking to my colleagues or talking to my acquaintances or talking to my peers around in the same, I realized a lot of the people who are in project space, they were struggling. They were struggling by, it could be like getting up in the middle of the night. How is my things going to be planned out? How's, as you mentioned the word KPI, am I going to reach the target? Am I going to, if this resource is not available, what am I going to talk to the stakeholders about? And I realized in my element of running, that's when I started discovering the potentiality within us itself. We do not have to go and look through huge books. We do not have to go through libraries. But taking a step back, re-looking at what is there in front of us, realigning to our soul or the person within on what is capable. Yes, stuff happens, but I have also, one of my coaching uh, statements, which I always say, is that, which is taken by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, is that between the stimuli and the response is a space. When do we get anxiety attacks? When do we get paranoid? When do we start getting stressed out? It's because there is an expectations. I have been in major stakeholder meeting where the stakes were very, very high. Very, very high amount of money was put across. But I have always realized, when I go and talk to the stakeholders, what happened, why it happened. Yes, I am also responsible as a project manager. When you're taking on that particular, it's not about managing the environment, but also one of the elements which I mentioned in my coaching is that when you take on that particular role, it also comes to the caveat of accountability and responsibility. ownership. You have been deemed that you're capable of doing it. But capabilities can come in different ways. I have come across project managers, it was like my way or the highway. But I realized, first and foremost, if you do a tuning within your own self, there is a lot of components that can work in your favor. First and foremost is that when you walk into that particular environment, how are people seeing you as? How do they see? How's your integrity? How's your sense of responsibilities? The different elements that comes together on it. That's where I started putting in these notions or these elements across. When you talk about leadership, you started about talking about leaders. Whom do we consider as leaders? Leaders are the people. I mean, that's again my way of looking at it, is that people who can lead, who come together and get it together, which is a very different thing about people who are managers, who are managing the element. So that's where the difference takes place. And these elements, it came across because, again, I've been running since 2010. And of course, there were spaces between the start line and the finish line, and the learnings that I've done. And as a marathon, I realize whether it is a project management or any other business cabin that you're working on, there is a start, there is a finish. What happens is a process. Remember the old time wherein there would be a data, there would be a information. How we do the processing, that's how it matters. Information should come out right, but then the process also matters for a cleaner information.
That is true. That is very true. That's a lot of insights that you gave there. Very, yeah, very much resonating with me personally, but I'm sure also with our listeners. And you just mentioned stakeholders in the answer that you just gave. Stakeholder management, that has to be one of the toughest aspects of project leadership and project management. So, well, we always say that first is communication, but secondly is stakeholder management. So I'm talking about from your team to anybody that's involved directly or indirectly in the project. What strategies have you found the most to be the most effective for balancing, competing priorities? So, you will have different priorities in the project, and at the same time keeping the team focused. Is there any form of strategies that you might have found effective or come about?
So here again, thanks to my background in service delivery, and later on when I've been coaching some higher executives and project managers, there is a very, very, very simple ingredient, a magic key which can open any door, and that is the power of listening, active listening, deep listening, because there is a challenge which is taking place. So before you can put out why you're not able to, that usually happens is that you would immediately come out with excuses, or you want to tell the excuses even before the person starts maybe screaming at you or throwing the papers at you or maybe sending you an email which is very harsh. The fact that you start pausing and listening to what the issue is, whether it is with your resources, to the engineer who's running late, or the engineer who's not able to deliver on time, or it is the CEO who believes that money has been put in, why it is not coming up. But listening and then giving what has happened. One of the elements over here, as I mentioned, is that accountability and responsibility. One of the aspect is that being truthful, being honest. That's another element of your leadership. because what is required in project management, or in fact, most of the other thing, is trust.
I believe if you working on a product for which you haven't defined the criteria the right way, that simply means that you did not listen enough, right?
And in fact, as I mentioned, is that there is when I'm coaching the executives, I during the third or fourth session, I put out something called as, now this is one of my trade secrets, is that I put in a caveat of I care, the words I care, and I ask them, is that right? ICARE, and put it for 2 weeks. And whenever they have done any of these particular elements, so I stands for integrity, C stands for commitment and communication, A stands for accountability, R stands for responsibility and respect. It's not about asking for respect, but how are you respecting the environment? How are you respecting the person who's telling you what needs to be done? Or how it's, or even your resources when they come to you. Are you respecting for the work they have done? Are you honoring them? And finally, it is empathy and ethics. So I tell them, just remember, I care. And every time you believe you have done something of that matter, just say that, okay, I did it. And after 2 weeks, we come back and I said, how many times have you done that? So when people become mindful how they're doing these things, why, how do we want a good project manager or a project executive or a project director or even a senior manager? If you see that person is doing these five elements,
So integrity, commitment.
commitment and communication, accountability, respect and responsibility, R and R, then you have got ethics and empathy.
That's really well put together. I mean, I care. Is that a framework or did you come up
I
with
just came
that?
up with that. And this one again, I came up, this was, I think so, during the third week. And this has come up, if you look into my LinkedIn posting, when I had done this, um, the third week, the marathon for that set, just that day, the next day, I had written out this phrase because during when I was doing the run, it came to the element that I was, it was just coming to the last 7 kilometers of the run. I could have walked away. There was nobody holding me responsible for it because I was doing the run on my solo. All I had my Garmin, and I could always give an excuse, my Garmin is not working. But I said, why am I doing this? And that's when I got this particular thing. Yes, it is about me, integrity.
I think what's very hard to many people, including myself, is sometimes to rewire your mind, your mindsets, and really have it to work a certain way consistently. It happens to have some bursts of energy to wanting to do things different, but to continue on that path, I believe that that's where probably your endurance in running translate really well in your philosophy as well.
So here, that's when I realized that. So after COVID, I got into work and I was getting into some amazing work, etc. But then once there is a stirring within, and you realize that this people require help. So as I mentioned before, is that from our deepest of pain comes our deepest of purpose. I realize that if I want to be of a service, because service has been always been a part of me. If I want to be a service of to another, so for me it was initially the people who are around me was project managers. There are very few, very few project managers or project executives who have had a, at times a peaceful night. It's always about the projects which is going on. But here, when you're truthful about how you're handling the work, that's when the change starts appearing. That's when you start creating a core within your own self. You're better guided towards success.
That's very deep. Um, and talking about your leadership philosophy and how it revolves around resilience and transformation, I'm curious to know how is this different from the traditional way, traditional leadership models in project management?
There are some amazing models, but for me, another by word is different strokes for different folks. So when I'm talking about resilience, or when I'm talking about, so first and foremost, for me, it is about self management. Because if you can have a control within your own self, you can have a better control outside outwards environment. When you are more kinder, when you are more focused within your own self, the results which come out is way more better. So that is my way of working. Yes, project management, we have got our procedures, policies, tools, tips, tricks, all these particular things are there. And this is the way to be done. Yes, I also have been a follower of the ISO, etc. It has to be there a sense of discipline on how it's to be done. And that's where the value of project management is. The dashes over the T's and the dots over the I's. So whether it is the old or waterfall method, or whether we are talking about the agile way, but there is a process which takes place. Agile way has got their own way of strength and the way of working around. Waterfall has got its own way of working around. But there is a process which takes place. I have always believed in the process. But what my way of doing is that it's about the people itself, the people who are in that particular space of management. How can you transform yourself to be better? One of I think so, it was last year or something like that when I was working on this field. When I used to do coaching, I used to talk about life balance, allow you to get allow people to get the work life balance. Everybody talks, oh, you know what, it's a work life balance. There are a lot of companies which, you know what, we'll give you a good work life balance. And I say that's all BS, because you got life and we got work, which is a subset of life. How many of us create work as life? So when you're talking about life, we have got a family, we have got some friends, we have got our activities, we've got all these particular things. But what has our priority in everything is work. Work has become your existing for work.
Yeah, because I believe we spend more than half of our lives working. I mean, that's more time that we spend with our families, right?
True, more than that. And it has I don't know who told about us that if you're going to do that particular, and if you do something that you love, it's not work anymore. So what I work towards is that creating a whole new you, that you enjoy what you're doing. There have been some great thinkers, as they said, I don't know who it was, but they said, even if you're going to be a sweeper or something like that, be the best sweeper, that you enjoy it. Because when you go back and having a peaceful night of sleep is more of a value than what comes into your bank account. So that's where my coaching, I focus on it. Because you're in the space of project management. You go out, there is a game which is going on TV. And if you're among your colleagues who are project managers, you'll talk about the game. But at some point of time, you're going back to the projects that you've been doing around.
It all revolves around work, right?
What's stopping you from pausing and enjoying the game? Do they give you money to spend time outside work for the next 3 to 4 hours thinking about work? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's what you call it as that's your work and you're getting a life just to sustain that work.
Mhm.
Congratulations to you.
So how do you suggest one goes about really reaching that work-life balance?
Again, that's where I've been into this particular thing. And so when Resilience Rise came out, I realized it's more about life. When you work towards having balance, everybody has got challenges. And challenges are good. And it's, as I always said, is that people who do not have challenges are buried under the earth. They're dead and gone. I worked in the mindset, and one of the elements which has always come out is that it's through the deepest of minds that comes some of the best of Kimberlites of the diamonds which come out. So you got to work hard to get that. For a lava or a caterpillar to turn into a butterfly, it does not get it easy. It has to struggle through that fat body inside the cocoon to break free, to allow the wings to come out. If somebody goes, it's old stories that somebody went and cut the cocoon so that the caterpillar could come out. It died. Same with us also, is that when we have to work towards getting ourselves to be better, getting ourselves to be stronger, we got to put in, we got to face the challenges. But what I work around is that how can I help you to get better than the challenges?
Right. To rise above.
Rise above. So that's where I talk about the resilience and rise framework. Here again, there's another aspect, and incidentally, when I'm talking about resilience and rise, with permission, I can say that I've just got this book which is released just of last week, wherein I talk about resilience plus rise. This one over here, what I say is that 26.2 transformative milestones to unleash your marathon of life mindset. So it is all about mindset, whether it is about your life, whether it's about your family, whether it's about your work, whether it's about your existence, whether it is about day to day activities. It is your mindset. And remember what I had told before is that the space between the response and the stimuli, that's when you have the freedom. So it's here I work around. And this would be put in another way is that when I call about PACE, PACE, wherein I talk about P stands for patience. So, whatever you're doing, if you're thinking about a quick result, good luck to you. Sometimes it becomes, sometimes you got to work a little more for it, but you got to have the patience. The examples I use over here for patience, I had come across last year, I'd gone to South Africa to do the Two Oceans 56-kilometer run. And at that point of time,
That's a beautiful race.
it's a fantastic race. Of course, I couldn't complete it because I was just injured. Somebody pushed me before the run started and I got injured, but that's a different story. But
So unfortunate, yeah.
it happens, life happens. But there again, there was a learning. There's always a learning if you stand back.
Thanks for bringing up the book because it's now out, it's now published. Once again, for our listeners, it's called Resilience and Rise.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
To try and have an outlook on the book's title and project management. Project management is often compared to a marathon rather than a sprint, right? Because it's a project, it goes a long way. So, how does the book draw from long distance running to offer lessons to readers that are managing complex projects?
This book has got 20, as I mentioned, 26.2 milestones. So what I have done is, for the people who know about running or about marathon, we know that marathon has got 6 stages. We got the start line, we got the initial miles, we got the middle miles, then we got the wall, then we got the finish lines or the last miles, and you got the finish line. Does this sound familiar to when you're doing a project management? When you got the initiation phase, we got the planning and monitoring. implementation, monitoring and control. So at different parts of this particular book, we hone on different elements. So it's maybe that you come to the third phase, that is the middle miles. So at that point of time, you think, so my goal is I got another 20, let's say 14 miles more to go or 18 miles more to go. How am I taking care of myself? Have I got enough of nutrition? Have I got enough of what do you call it as strength in my body to continue on that particular element?
Hydration and all
Hydration.
that.
So, or if
Mhm.
you're doing about goal setting, so this is a part of it. How at some point of time, how is your goal setting? That comes in the initial part, initiation or the start line. There's always a sense of nervousness. There's a sense of excitement. And that's one thing which, when I've always walked into a project meeting and when there's an initiative, there's always a sense like, wow, okay, this is going to be something different, which has never been done more or less before. And we are being put to it to make the change, to make the difference. So the relevance, what you mentioned, Tony, is that there is a lot of parallels. And here again, I talk about the examples I've used is not only about my running, that 85 long distances I've done, but also I've taken figures, how they have broken the glass ceiling, whether it is Nelson Mandela, whether it is Malala, whether it is Abraham Lincoln, whether like there's a story about Buster Douglas, who defeated Mike Tyson just on one caveat that he had promised his mother he's going to be a winner. It was a commitment. And he went to defeat Mike Tyson from a nobody to somebody. So, what can you do as a project manager from a nobody to somebody to make a project your success? So, the parallels that I've used in the book, it's not just defined to the world, to life. It's to life, but it's not just about work or a race or things, but all over the place.
Do you include a lot of these practical examples in the book? Yeah.
Very much. Every book, there is a space for journaling, because I say in the initial part of the book itself, I say is that be honest to your own self. Get yourself a book. Nobody will be able to read it, but when you're writing on that book, be truthful. If something scares you, what scared you? If you're not taking that next step, why you're not taking the next step? What's stopping you? How do you define failures? So it is on, once you put it on paper, and there are I've put in different steps. Like I've also put in for time management, Eisenhower's matrix box. What is urgent? What is important? Not urgent, not important. Things like that. So any part of life you're in, if you open up this particular book, there are nuggets which will get you to the point that it'll get you inspired, it'll get you motivated. But finally, I would say as a runner, it's good to think about getting out to run. I live in Vancouver. There are days when it rains, and I say that I don't know. Having a mindset is good, but what matters is putting on your shoes and getting out of that door and starting the run. Same thing about the book. The book may say, and same if we go back to the principles and the ideologies. There are amazing self-help books, but end of the day, they will work if you work.
Absolutely. So do you think that let's just I can resonate with the book based on the fact that I'm a runner myself, but for someone that's not a runner and they pick up the book, do you think that they will be inspired to
Very
run
much,
or
very much, because this
yeah,
the examples I use, some of the examples I use is about running, but it's more about life examples. There is an example I have used over here. There is a chapter about relationship, and this is example I've mentioned is that I had gone to Japan to do the Saitama Marathon, and due to some unfortunate part, I could not reach the finish line, and I took another diverging part, and I got lost.
Okay. So were they not, the signs were not?
It was not there, and people they and finally I reached the finish area, but I did not see my wife, who was we been waiting for around that last 4 to 5 hours, waiting for me to finish the run, and we missed one another for the next 2 or 3 hours. We both were seeking out. I went and told the police out over there. I told the loudspeakers, but we just couldn't find one another till we saw. What I wanted to say over there was, she has been my support for me to do all these runs. Same with life. If you're taking on some element, whether it's your friend, whether it's your partner, whether it's your wife, whether it's your brother, whether it's your sister, whoever it is, whether it's a mentor, whether it's your coach, relationships do matter. So maybe I use the examples in running. I use an example of when I just mentioned about South Africa. So just 2 minutes, I was just saying is that I was 2 minutes before the run, and somebody else wanted to go to the next scorer, and they were rushing through, and I was standing quite lightly, and they hit my heel, and I fell on my right knee, and I heard a loud whack. I knew something went wrong. But when you're so fueled up, I had trained so very well for this run, and it was supposed to be the last run that I would do. Maybe it was supposed to be my 86th, and I said, okay, let me finish it off. But I knew something was wrong. By the time I reached around 13 or 14 kilometers, I looked down on my I had worn a long, what do you call it as those running pants, and I realized it had torn totally, and it was not a good sight. By the time it was 13 or 15, 13 or something like that, I realized that I just got myself another knee, which was looking very purple in color, like a big overgrown potato, and I realized that was bad. I pushed myself till 17 kilometers. Pain was excruciating. It was very, very bad. I said, okay, now what? And now what? So I waited for the sweeper bus. It took me to the finish line. But the moment I got out of the bus, I said, now what? So what? It's just through these ideologies of this particular book, I got that particular mindset. Yes, I may not be able to run, and I did not run just until few weeks back, because physically it took a while to heal, and yet mentally and emotionally I had to really grind myself to get back to it. But what I did was, I focused my energy in the last 1 year in rewriting this book. So even when failures come in, I call it as failures of failure. How can you change a failure to work towards your own successes? Projects might fail, stakeholders may move out, or budgets you may not be able to have come across various projects wherein the carpet has been just pulled under my feet. Say, okay, but what has this taught me? When you change the narration about why life is happening to me and say that why is life happening for me? What did I learn? What can I make of this particular time that has been given to me? What have I understood in this? How can I value the steps that is going to take place? That's when the changes takes place, Tony.
That is, that's, yeah. Honestly, I cannot wait to put my hands on the book. I'm an avid reader too, and I will definitely get myself a copy. Yeah, for sure. A lot of sounds like there's a lot of inspiring, not only stories but also your philosophy, which is admirable. So before we part ways, I just wanted to know if there's any practical strategies from your book that project managers can immediately implement to build resilience in themselves and in their teams, and if there is, one takeaway from your book that every leader and project manager could remember, what would it be? This should not stop anyone, any of the listeners, to go and get the book, but just to to get a bit ahead, and for them to know um, what some of these strategies that you teach in your book, can be applied.
When you wake up in the morning, just say, how am I going to live this day? Rather than just existing through the day, rather than just getting up, looking at the news, looking at the newspaper, having a coffee, and then rushing to work or whatever it is, what can you do to make it better? The moment you change that small part of your thinking, you're already on your way to be more successful, more resilient. With that comes about, and if you, since you mentioned about, since it is the PMI element and project managers, I believe one of the things which project management have or project managers fail to do is being kind to their own self. We all are doing some good job, but we may not get that pat on the back, or we may not get the validation. But if you realize, remember the word excellence, work for the best, forget the rest. That will get you more resilient. Walk in. I told you about the I care caveat. Okay, I care has helped me to be so strong in whatever I do. Write it down. And I'm sure, if not anything, I'm not too sure about your project management, but your self management is going to reach the stars. And that's the assurance that I'm giving you.
Oh, that's really brilliant. And Thomas, once again, it has been a very insightful discussion on all of these topics, from resilience to leadership and also to project management. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and experience with us today.
It was an honor.
Your, yeah, your insights into all of this, and also thanks for writing that book that I would highly recommend all of our listeners and everyone watching us on YouTube. So please go get yourself a copy and delve more into the framework that Thomas was eager to share with us through the book. So once again, thanks for this. It's much appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so very much. It was an honor, privilege, and extremely fun. This conversation was a beautiful conversation. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this journey. Thank you, and best
Yeah.
wishes.
Yeah, my pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of PMILOC. Once again, the Hour of PM Power. And if you found this conversation valuable, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with your network. And until next time, keep leading with purpose, embracing resilience, and making an impact.